I came home early and found my parents packing up my things. They laughed and said, "You don't need that much space. Your brother and his pregnant wife will live in your big house. You can manage in a tiny studio." Imagine coming home from a business trip, completely exhausted, only to find your entire life being packed into cardboard boxes by the very people who claim to love you most. That's exactly what happened to me, and it was a betrayal so deep, it shook me to my core. My name's Katie, and at 27, I'd poured everything into my career. 5 years of late nights and weekends at a top marketing firm had finally paid off. I'd just been promoted. But despite my professional success, my living situation was a secret source of shame. I was still living in my parents' guest house. It wasn't about money. I could absolutely afford my own place. This arrangement, which started as a temporary post-college fix, had somehow stretched into 5 long years. I paid rent, handled all my bills, and had my own entrance, trying to maintain some semblance of independence. My parents, Robert and Eleanor, always spun it as the perfect setup. Why waste money on rent when you could be saving? Mom would say, usually adding, besides, we love having you close. My younger sister, Madison, had been smarter. The moment she graduated, she moved downtown, and I envied her clean break. Looking back, the signs of my parents' control, especially Mom's, were always there. In high school, she'd eliminate colleges she deemed too far. In college, she'd call my roommates to check on my studies. Even now, she had an opinion on everything from my hairstyle to my dating life. Dad was more laid back, but he almost always deferred to Mom, creating a united front that felt impossible to penetrate. About a month ago, I started dropping hints about finding my own place. Nothing concrete, just browsing online listings. "I think it might be time for me to find something in the city, closer to work," I'd said casually at Sunday dinner. Mom's fork froze midair. "The commute never bothered you before." I explained it wasn't terrible, but it was almost 2 hours a day, and I was almost 28. It might be nice to have my own space. Dad pointed out I had my own space in the guest house, but his tone was softer. I thought I'd appease them, but Mom peppered me with questions for the rest of the night. Neighborhoods, danger, old buildings. Each question felt like a tiny hook, trying to snag my resolve. I answered patiently, thinking I was just preparing them. Then, last week, I flew out of town for an important client presentation. Technically, I worked from our suburban office, but our biggest client was downtown. The presentation wrapped up early, a huge win for my team, and my boss told me to take the rest of the week off. I decided to surprise my family by coming home early. Maybe we could celebrate, and I could finally tell them I was seriously looking at apartments. I even had a showing scheduled for Saturday in a neighborhood I absolutely loved. As I pulled into our long driveway that Wednesday evening, my stomach dropped. My Aunt Sylvia's car was there. She never visited without planning something special. Then I saw them, large cardboard boxes stacked near the front door of the main house, labeled in my mother's neat handwriting, Katie Kitchen, Katie Books. A cold dread settled in. Through the window, I could see movement, hear hushed voices, Mom's rising occasionally to give directions. They were packing my things. Why? And why without telling me? I pushed open the front door. The familiar creak announced my arrival before I could say a word. The activity inside froze. Mom stood in the center of the living room, clipboard in hand, Dad and Aunt Sylvia hovering nearby with half-filled boxes. Full story on the channel. Link below. Click now and watch what happened next.